The desert wind howled like a wounded animal, whipping sand across the cracked asphalt of Route 17, where the sun dipped low and painted the horizon in blood-red streaks. In the shadow of a rusted gas station sign that creaked like old bones, a small boy, no more than 8, huddled against the pump, his thin frame shaking not just from the chill, but from the terror etched into his wide, tear-streaked eyes. He clutched a frayed backpack to his chest, whispering pleas to no one, his voice lost in the vast emptiness. The station was abandoned, its windows shattered like broken promises, and the boy had been there for hours, or so it seemed from the way his lips were cracked and his clothes dusted with the day's relentless grit. Far off, the distant rumble of thunder, or was it engines, stirred the air, but for now he was alone, a fragile spark in the gathering dusk. Ethan, ghost. Harlan pulled his weathered Harley to a stop at the edge of the lot, the engine's growl fading into a reluctant purr before dying altogether. At 42, Ethan was a man carved from the same harsh stone as the canyons around him, broad-shouldered, with a salt and pepper beard, framing a face lined by too many sunsets and too few explanations. His leather vest, patched with the faded emblem of the Iron Vipers, a coiled serpent under a shattered shield, hung heavy on his frame, carrying the weight of roads untraveled and oaths half-forgotten. He'd been riding solo for months, chasing ghosts of his own since the war that had stolen his squad and left him with a limp and a tattoo on his forearm. A simple iron promise, inked in black, reading, "Blood for blood, forever bound." It was a vow from his youth, sworn in the foxholes of a forgotten conflict to brothers who'd become family when blood ties failed. But tonight, as the first stars pierced the sky, Ethan wasn't hunting redemption. He was just passing through, low on fuel and lower on hope. The boy's sobs cut through the quiet like a knife, pulling Ethan from his thoughts. He killed the kickstand and swung his leg over the bike, boots crunching on gravel as he approached slow. Hands open to show he meant no harm. "Hey, kid," he rumbled, voice gravelly from disuse, crouching to eye level. The boy flinched, scooting back until his shoulders hit the pump, eyes darting like a cornered animal. Up close, Ethan saw the signs, the rumpled shirt with a faint stain suggesting rough handling, the way the kid's arms wrapped protectively around himself. No parent in sight, no car, just the endless stretch of highway mocking any hope of rescue. "You lost? What's your name?" The boy wiped his nose on his sleeve, sniffling. "Timmy, my mom's. She's gone. Some bad men took her. They said they'd come back for me if I told." His voice cracked, and fresh tears carved paths through the dirt on his cheeks. Ethan's gut twisted, a familiar ache, the kind that whispered of old wounds. He'd seen too many like this in his rides across the Badlands. Kids caught in the crossfire of debts unpaid, lives unraveling like cheap thread. But this one hit different. The boy's fear was raw, unfiltered, the kind that demanded action. Before Ethan could respond, headlights pierced the gloom. 2 black sedans screeching into the lot, tires spitting dust. The doors flew open and 3 men spilled out, shadows in cheap suits, their faces hard and eyes gleaming with the false confidence of those who preyed on the weak. One, broad and tattooed on his neck, sneered as he spotted the boy. "There you are, runt. Time to come with us. Your ma's waiting." The others flanked him, hands twitching toward concealed bulges under their jackets, the air thick with the metallic tang of threat. Ethan rose slowly, positioning himself between the boy and the intruders, his hand hovering near the knife at his belt, not for show, but for the quiet resolve it represented. "He ain't going nowhere," Ethan said, tone even, like the calm before a storm. The leader laughed, a bark that echoed off the pumps, stepping closer. "Mind your business, biker trash. This ain't your fight." But Ethan didn't budge. His eyes locked on the man's, reading the flicker of uncertainty. Behind him, Timmy whimpered, "Please, don't let them." The standoff stretched, seconds ticking like a fuse. Ethan's mind raced. Alone against three, no backup, just the weight of that old tattoo burning under his sleeve. He'd walked away from too many battles, left too many promises in the dust. Not this time. With a nod toward the boy, he murmured, "Stay behind me, kid. We're getting out of here." The leader lunged, fist swinging, but Ethan sidestepped, grabbing the man's arm and twisting it back with a crack that split the night. The others charged, but Ethan was a blur of motion, fueled by memory, by the ghosts urging him on. A knee to one's gut, an elbow to another's jaw, and they crumpled, groaning in the dirt. Panting, Ethan turned to the boy, who stared up with wide-eyed awe. You're safe now. Come on, let's find your mom." Timmy hesitated, then reached out, his small hand brushing Ethan's arm as he pulled up his own sleeve to reveal a faded mark, a tiny iron promise, inked small but unmistakable. "My mom has the same one," the boy whispered. "She said it means family forever." Ethan's hands trembled, the tattoo on his forearm seeming to pulse with sudden life. That mark, it was from the war, shared among his unit, a bond forged in fire. But how? His old flame, Lena, had vanished years ago, leaving only rumors of a life upended by the same shadows that haunted him. If the boy bore it. If Lena did. The pieces slammed together like thunder. A promise forgotten, now calling him back. He knelt, steadying his voice. "Tell me everything, Timmy," starting with her name. As the boy spoke, haltingly at first, then in a rush, Ethan felt the road shift beneath him. This wasn't just a rescue, it was a reckoning. The iron vipers, scattered but loyal, would ride again, for honor, for blood, for the family he'd thought lost to time. The first stars blinked overhead, and Ethan fired up his Harley, Timmy clinging to his back. The engine roared to life, a vow renewed, carrying them into the night where secrets waited to unfold. The highway blurred into a ribbon of black under the Harley's headlight, slicing through the night like a blade through silk. Ethan gripped the handlebars tighter, the vibration humming up his arms, a steady rhythm that drowned out the boy's soft breaths against his back. Timmy's arms were locked around Ethan's waist, small but unyielding, as if the kid had already claimed this stranger as anchor in the storm. The desert air rushed past, cool and sharp, carrying the faint scent of creosote bushes and distant rain. Ethan's mind raced faster than the engine. Lena. The name alone stirred dust from corners he'd long sealed shut. She'd been the light in his foxhole days, the one who'd traced that iron promise tattoo on his skin with her fingertip, whispering it would bind them beyond the bullets and the mud. But war had a way of unraveling even the strongest threads. She'd vanished after his discharge, a ghost letter citing debts from the old life as her goodbye. Now this boy, with his matching mark, small and defiant on his skinny arm, family forever. The words echoed like an accusation. They rode for what felt like hours, though the dashboard clock marked barely 30 minutes, the endless flats giving way to jagged hills that loomed like silent judges. Ethan eased off the throttle as they neared the outskirts of Dusthaven, a forgotten town clinging to the edge of the Badlands. Ramshackle diners, flickering neon signs, promising cold beer and hot lies. Timmy had murmured directions between gusts of wind. "Mum said if I ever got lost, go to the old mill by the river. That's where we hide." The river was more myth than water these days, a dry bed choked with willows and regrets, but Ethan knew the spot. It was neutral ground, a place where outlaws and wanderers met without drawing heat. He scanned the mirrors for tails. Those suits from the gas station might regroup. Their kind didn't fold easy, but the road behind was empty, save for the occasional coyote's eyes glinting in the dark. Pulling into the mill's shadow, the Harley coughed to a stop, its growl fading into the night's hush. The structure was a relic, walls of weathered wood sagging under ivy, the wheel long rusted still. Moonlight filtered through cracks, casting silver veins across the ground. Ethan helped Timmy down, the boy's legs wobbling like a colt's first steps. "Stay close," he said, voice low, scanning the perimeter. No lights, no movement, but the air felt heavy, charged with the residue of recent trouble, overturned crates, scuff marks in the dirt suggesting a struggle hastily covered. Timmy pointed to a side door, ajar like an invitation to trouble. "In there. She waits sometimes." Ethan pushed the door open with his shoulder, the hinges protesting with a groan that set his teeth on edge. Inside, the air was stale, thick with dust motes dancing in his flashlight beam. Empty at first glance, barrels stacked like forgotten sentinels, cobwebs draping the corners, but then a faint shuffle from the back. He drew his knife, the blade catching the light, and advanced, Timmy trailing like a shadow. "Lena!" he called, the name tasting foreign on his tongue after all these years. Silence, then a rustle, and a figure emerged from behind a partition, a woman, mid-30s, her dark hair tangled, face pale but fierce. She froze, eyes widening at the sight of him, then darted to Timmy, pulling the boy into a crushing embrace. "Ethan?" Her voice was a whisper, cracked like dry earth, but it hit him like a round from the old days. Lena, older, harder around the edges, but the same fire in her hazel eyes. Scars traced her collarbone, visible above her faded shirt, and there on her inner wrist, the iron promise gleamed faintly, a twin to his own. Timmy buried his face in her shoulder, mumbling, "He saved me, Mom, from the bad men." Lena's gaze lifted to Ethan, a storm of gratitude and wariness brewing. "How? Why are you here?" He sheathed the knife, leaning against a beam to ease the ache in his leg, the old wound flaring under stress. "Found the kid at the station, alone. Some suits tried to take him. He showed me this." He rolled up his sleeve, exposing the tattoo. Her breath hitched, and she mirrored the gesture, the marks aligning like puzzle pieces long separated. "Timmy's, he's yours?" The question hung, heavy as the mill's beams. She nodded, stroking the boy's hair. "After you left, I couldn't wait for the dust to settle. The war's shadows followed us, debts from your unit, favors called in wrong. I inked him young to remember, to protect." The pieces clattered into place. The suits weren't random. They were enforcers from the old syndicate, the kind that twisted veteran oaths into chains. Lena's eyes darkened. "They've been hunting us for months. Said I owed for protecting you back then, hiding messages, patching wounds. Now they want the boy as leverage. I ran, but they cornered me here tonight. I fought, but—" She trailed off, glancing at a bloodied rag on the floor, signs of her resistance clear without words. Ethan's jaw tightened. The promise burned hotter now. Not just ink, but a call to arms. "You should have reached out. The vipers were still bound." She laughed bitterly, a sound like breaking glass. "Scattered like you. Last I heard, half the crew was ghosts themselves, lost to the bottle to the grave." But her eyes searched his, finding the spark. "Timmy needs us whole. If you're here, maybe it's fate pulling the threads." Outside, a low rumble stirred the night. Not thunder, but engines, multiple, approaching like a herd. Ethan peered through a crack in the wall, headlights weaving through the hills, a convoy of bikes, at least a dozen, their riders silhouetted against the moon. Not the suits. This was leather and chrome, the faint glint of viper patches. Word had spread. His old second, Marcus Rook Hale, must have caught wind from a radio call Ethan made en route. Rook led the pack, a bear of a man with a scarred face and unshakable loyalty, pulling up with a nod that said more than words. The mill door swung wide as the vipers filed in, boots echoing, faces a mix of grizzled vets and fresh recruits bound by the same code. Rook clapped Ethan's shoulder, his grip iron. "Heard you needed backup. Ghost. Kid's story hit the wires, tattoo and all. We're riding for the promise." Lena watched, tension easing from her frame as Timmy clung closer, but Ethan's gaze flicked to the horizon. The suits wouldn't stop here. This was just the spark. The real fire would test every bond. As the group huddled, voices murmuring plans in the dim light, Ethan felt the weight shift from burden to purpose. The road ahead twisted with shadows of corruption, authorities turning blind eyes to the syndicate's grip on these towns. But with Lena's hand brushing his, Timmy's trust in his eyes, and the Viper's engines idling like a heartbeat, the forgotten oath roared back to life. Dawn crept closer, painting the mill in gold, and Ethan knew this ride would carve new scars, but heal the deepest ones. For family, for forever. The mill's interior hummed with the low murmur of voices, a chorus of gravel and resolve as the iron vipers gathered in the flickering lantern light. Shadows danced across their faces, etched lines from battles long faded, eyes sharp with the kind of loyalty that didn't fade with time. Ethan stood at the center, his broad frame a pillar amid the cluster of leather-clad figures, the air thick with the scent of oil and sweat-soaked denim. Lena cradled Timmy on a makeshift bench of stacked crates, the boy's head resting against her, his small chest rising and falling in uneasy rhythm. The reunion had cracked something open in Ethan, a fissure where old regrets seeped through, but there was no time to dwell. The rumble of those approaching engines outside had shifted from ally to alert. Rook leaned against a beam, his massive arms crossed, the viper patch on his vest catching the light like a warning. At 45, he was the anchor of the crew, his scarred cheek a map of the same war that had forged them all. "We got scouts out front," he said, voice a low thunder. "No sign of the suits yet, but they're sniffing. Word on the wire is they've got eyes in Dusthaven, local badges on the take, turning blind to the syndicate's games." Ethan's jaw tightened, the tattoo on his forearm itching like a fresh wound. The syndicate, shadows from their military days, twisting oaths into debts, preying on the broken to build their web. Lena's story fit too neatly. Her role in hiding their unit's secrets, patching not just bodies, but the fragile lines of command. Now it circled back, hungry for the boy as payment. Lena's eyes met Ethan's across the dim space, a silent question hanging between them. She looked worn, the fire in her still burning but banked by exhaustion, her fingers tracing absent patterns on Timmy's arm where his own tattoo hid. "I never wanted to drag you back in," she murmured, loud enough for the circle to hear. "After you shipped out, I thought the promise was just ink, a memory to keep me going. But they found out about the messages I passed, the risks I took, said it made me collateral." Timmy stirred, whispering, "They hurt you, Mom. I saw." She shushed him gently, but the boy's words landed like stones in still water, rippling through the group. Ethan knelt beside them, his hand hovering before resting on her shoulder, warm, tentative, the first touch in years that felt like home. "We end this," Ethan said, rising to face the Vipers. His voice carried the weight of command he hadn't wielded since the foxholes. Steady despite the tremor in his core, not with guns blazing but smart. "We expose them, get proof of the corruption, the way they're pulling strings on the force here. Timmy's safe passage is the line we draw." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the men. Jax, a wiry vet with a quick laugh masking deeper scars, nodded from the back. "I've got a contact in the next town over, old medic who owes the crew. She can patch any loose ends, maybe even vouch for Lena's side." The plan took shape in hushed tones, split into pairs, scout the syndicate's holdout in Dusthaven's underbelly, a rundown warehouse by the tracks where deals went down under cover of freight cars. Ethan would lead the core group with Lena and the boy, while Rook coordinated diversions to draw out the enforcers. As the meeting broke, the Vipers moved with practiced efficiency, checking bikes, loading packs with essentials, water, maps, a few encrypted radios pieced from scavenged parts. Outside, the night had deepened, stars pricking the velvet sky like distant promises. Ethan stepped into the cool air. Breathing deep, the earthy tang of the riverbed below mingled with the metallic bite of exhaust. Timmy followed, tugging at his jacket. "You won't leave us again, right? Like before?" The question pierced, innocent as a blade. Ethan crouched, meeting the boy's gaze, those hazel eyes so like Lena's. "That promise on your arm? It's mine too. Means I ride with you now, kid. No more ghosts." Timmy's face lit with a tentative smile, small hand clasping Ethan's larger one, the tattoos brushing like a seal. But peace shattered with a distant crack, tires on gravel, too deliberate for wanderers. Headlights swept the hills, not the steady beam of allies, but erratic flashes probing like fingers in the dark. Rook burst from the mill, signaling silence. 3 vehicles, unmarked, suits, for sure. The Vipers melted into position, engines cold to avoid noise, bodies low behind the structure's sagging walls. Ethan's heart pounded, a drumbeat syncing with the approaching growl. Lena pulled Timmy behind a rusted barrel, her whisper fierce. "Stay down! We've got this!" Ethan drew his knife again, more habit than intent, positioning himself at the door with Rook at his flank. The cars halted at the perimeter, doors creaking open to spill 4 figures, broader than the gas station thugs, faces obscured by the glare, but postures screaming authority borrowed from fear. One stepped forward, voice amplified by the night's hush. "We know you're in there, Harlan. Word travels fast in these parts. Hand over the woman and the kid, and maybe your old crew walks away clean." The name hit Ethan like a gut punch. They knew him, his history, the war scars that made him a target. Corruption ran deep. Someone in Dusthaven had sold them out, twisting badges into leashes. Rook's hand signaled a feint. 2 Vipers revving bikes on the far side, drawing the intruder's attention with a sudden roar. Chaos erupted, shouts, footsteps crunching toward the diversion. Ethan seized the moment, slipping out a side path with Lena and Timmy in tow, the group converging silently on their Harleys. Engines whispered to life, a chorus of restrained power, and they peeled away into the shadows, weaving through the dry riverbed's twists. Bullets. None yet, just the threat hanging like smoke. Behind, the mill faded, a silhouette against the rising moon. But Ethan knew it wasn't escape, it was escalation. The syndicate's reach extended further than he'd feared, infiltrating not just streets but souls. As they hit the open road, wind whipping their faces, Lena leaned close over Timmy's head, her voice cutting through the rush. "Where to now? We can't run forever." Ethan's eyes fixed on the horizon, where faint lights of Dusthaven flickered like false hopes. "To the warehouse. We turn the hunt around, find their ledger, the proof of payoffs to the law. For the promise. For us." The convoy stretched behind, a line of iron wills against the dark, engines thrumming with unspoken vows. Dawn was hours away, but the real light would come from truth unearthed. Bonds reforged in the fire of what was to come. Timmy's grip tightened, a small anchor in the storm, as the road called them deeper into reckoning. The road to Dusthaven twisted like a serpent's spine, the convoy of Harleys cutting through the pre-dawn chill with a low, unified growl that vibrated through Ethan's bones. He led the pack, Lena and Timmy secured on his bike behind him, her arms wrapped around the boy, while one hand rested lightly on Ethan's hip, a touch that grounded him amid the rush of wind and uncertainty. The desert gave way to the town's ragged edges, sagging billboards advertising dreams long faded, chain-link fences rattling in the breeze, and the distant wail of a freight train echoing like a mournful ghost. Dusthaven wasn't a place for second chances. It was a graveyard for them, where the syndicate's tendrils choked out any light, turning sheriffs into puppets and streets into traps. Ethan's mind churned with the plan: infiltrate the warehouse, unearthed the ledger that mapped their bribes to the local force, exposed the rot that had chased Lena and Timmy into hiding. But doubt gnawed at him. One wrong move, and the boy could become the price. Rook's bike pulled alongside as they neared the tracks, his voice crackling over the radio clipped to Ethan's vest. Scouts confirm. 2 guards at the main gate, lazy but armed. Warehouse is lit up inside. Deals going down. We split here. Jax and me draw 'em out with a noise on the east side. You 4 go in quiet through the loading dock. Ethan nodded into the wind, the signal clear. The group peeled off, engines throttling down to whispers as they coasted into the shadows of rusted rail cars. The air here was heavier, laced with the oily reek of machinery and something sharper, fear, perhaps, or the metallic edge of impending confrontation. Timmy shifted against Lena, his whisper barely audible over the hum. "Are we gonna be okay, like you promised?" Lena squeezed him tighter, her voice steady for his sake. "Your dad's leading us, that's as good as iron." They dismounted in the lee of a derelict boxcar, boots silent on the gravel. Ethan scanned the warehouse, a hulking beast of corrugated metal, its walls scarred by years of neglect, floodlights casting harsh pools that left the alleys in inky blind spots. The loading dock yawned like an open maw, ramp tilted at an angle, suggesting hasty abandonment. He motioned Lena and Timmy to a concealed spot behind stacked pallets, her eyes locking on his with a mix of resolve and reluctance. "Keep him low. If it goes south, head for the bikes and ride north, no looking back." She nodded, pulling Timmy close, but her free hand brushed his tattooed arm. A silent vow of her own. Ethan and the remaining Viper, a quiet vet named Silas, with eyes like chipped flint, slipped forward, shadows among shadows. The dock's interior was a labyrinth of crates and conveyor belts frozen in disuse, the air thick with dust and the faint buzz of fluorescent bulbs overhead. Ethan moved like a spectre, his limp muted by adrenaline, knife sheathed but senses razor-sharp. Distant voices drifted from the main floor, gruff tones haggling over shipments that smelled of more than cargo, whispers of payoffs to the chief and the Harlan debt. His blood ran cold. They weren't just after Lena, they were settling scores from the war, twisting the unit's old secrets into leverage. Silas pointed to a stairwell leading up. Rusted but intact, likely to an office overlooking the floor. They ascended in silence, the metal groaning faintly under their weight, hearts pounding in sync with the creak. At the top, a door hung ajar, spilling warm light from within. Ethan peered through the crack, a cramped room cluttered with desks, file cabinets looming like sentinels, and 2 men hunched over papers under a single lamp. One was burly, sleeves rolled up to reveal syndicate ink, a coiled snake mocking the Viper's emblem, while the other, slimmer, tapped at a battered laptop screens glowing with digital ledgers. "Boss wants the kid by morning," the burly one growled, flipping through a notebook. "Harlan's crew is sniffing too close. Pay the badges extra to lock down the roads." The slim one chuckled. "A sound like scraping tin. Already wired the chief. Proofs right here, transfers, dates, the works. If they dig, we bury 'em first." Ethan's hand tightened on the doorframe, the pieces locking into place. The corruption wasn't loose ends. It was a noose. Badges bought to enforce the syndicate's grip on veterans like him, turning protectors into prey. Silas whispered, "Now or never." Ethan nodded, easing the door open with a featherlight push. They surged in low, Silas tackling the slim man with a muffled thud, clamping a hand over his mouth, while Ethan disarmed the burly one with a swift arm lock, the notebook tumbling free. No shots fired, just the scuffle of limbs and stifled grunts, the air electric with restraint. Ethan bound them with zip ties from his pack, gagging them with rags from the desk, his movements precise, born of foxhole necessity rather than rage. The ledger lay open on the floor, pages yellowed but damning, Entries detailing bribes to Dusthaven's sheriff's office, names crossed out like ghosts, vets who'd resisted and paid with silence or worse. Ethan's eyes scanned for Lena's trail. There it was. A line about collateral asset, woman and child, tied to Harlan Promise. Proof enough to shatter the web if they could get it out. He snapped photos on a burner phone, the flash a brief betrayal in the dimness, then stuffed the notebook into his vest. Silas hauled the laptop, its cord yanked free with a spark, but as they turned to leave, alarms blared, shrill and piercing, triggered by some hidden sensor. Footsteps thundered below, voices shouting coordinates. "They're up top! Seal the exits!" Ethan's mind raced, the weight of the evidence like chains. He radioed Rook. "Got it, but we're pinned. Draw fire now!" Outside, engines roared to life, the diversion kicking in with a crash of metal on the east side. Gunfire popped, warning shots, not aimed. The Vipers playing the edge without crossing into blood. Ethan and Silas burst from the office, leaping stairs 2 at a time, the ledger burning against his chest. They hit the main floor amid chaos, enforcers scrambling, shadows darting between crates. Ethan spotted Lena and Timmy at the dock's edge, her face pale but fierce as she urged the boy toward the bikes. A figure lunged from the gloom, an enforcer, pistol raised, but Silas intercepted, tackling him into a pile of boxes with a crash that shook the rafters. They spilled out into the night, air cool and alive with the scent of gunpowder and freedom. The convoy reformed, Harleys firing up in a symphony of escape, weaving through the tracks as bullets whined harmlessly overhead, the Viper's precision keeping the line intact. Ethan glanced back, the warehouse shrinking, its lights flickering like a dying fire. But victory tasted bittersweet. The ledger exposed the rot, but it also named names, old brothers who'd bent under pressure, forcing choices no one wanted. As Dusthaven's lights blurred behind, Timmy's voice cut through the wind. "We did it, right? Like the promise." Ethan reached back, squeezing Lena's hand over the boy's. "First step, kid. Truth's our weapon now." The road stretched ahead, dawn's first blush staining the sky, but shadows lingered, alliances tested, consciences weighed. The ride wasn't over, it was just beginning, with justice hanging by the thread of their unyielding bond. If this chapter's got your heart racing, smash that like button. It helps these stories reach more riders on the road. The first rays of dawn clawed over the horizon, turning the desert into a canvas of molten gold and lingering shadows. As the Iron Viper's convoy thundered toward the outskirts of Havenridge, a dusty crossroads town that served as neutral ground between the Badlands and the law's fraying edges. Ethan's Harley led the pack, the engine's steady thrum a counterpoint to the chaos still echoing in his veins. The ledger pressed against his chest like a second heartbeat, its pages heavy with the syndicate's sins. Names of crooked badges, wire transfers that brought silence, and threads tracing back to their war-torn unit. Lena's grip on his waist tightened over Timmy's small form. The boy's cheek pressed to her back, his breathing even now but laced with the fragility of trust, newly earned. The wind carried the sharp tang of sagebrush and cooling exhaust, whipping through the convoy like a cleansing breath. But Ethan knew better. Truth unearthed didn't erase the hunt, it sharpened the fangs. Rook's bike surged forward, pulling even with Ethan's, his scarred face set in grim lines under the rising sun. Over the radio's crackle, his voice cut through. "Havenridge has a safe house. Old garage run by Mira, our medic contact. She'll secure the ledger, get word to the feds who aren't bought. But roads are crawling. That alarm spooked the locals. Keep eyes peeled." Ethan nodded into the rush, scanning the mirrors where Silas and Jax flanked the rear, their Harleys weaving like guardians. The town loomed ahead. Weathered storefronts huddled against the wind, a single traffic light swaying like a pendulum, and the faint wail of sirens in the distance. Not close, but closing. Havenridge was a limbo place where outlaws bartered for peace and sheriffs turned blind for the right price. If the ledger's exposure hit right, it could unravel the syndicate's hold, freeing not just Lena and Timmy, but the ghosts of their past. They rolled into the garage under the guise of a routine pit stop, engines dying one by one in the oil-stained lot. The structure was a fortress of faded red brick, bay doors yawning open to reveal tool benches cluttered with wrenches and half-rebuilt motors, the air inside thick with the scent of grease and fresh coffee brewing in a corner pot. Mira emerged from the shadows, a sturdy woman in her late 30s, her nurse's scrubs swapped for a grease-smeared apron, salt-streaked hair pulled back in a no-nonsense ponytail. Her eyes, sharp as a surgeon's scalpel, flicked over the group, lingering on Timmy with a softening that spoke of her own buried losses. "Heard you were coming," she said, voice steady as she waved them in. "Lock it down. I've got ears on the scanner. Sheriff's boys are mobilizing, calling it a disturbance at the warehouse. Syndicate's pulling strings already." Ethan dismounted, helping Lena and Timmy down with a gentleness that belied his rough edges. The boy rubbed his eyes, blinking at the unfamiliar space, but stuck close to his mother, his small tattoo peeking from under his sleeve like a badge of belonging. Lena's face was drawn, the adrenaline fading to reveal the toll, faint bruises shadowing her jaw, a weariness in her posture that twisted Ethan's gut. "We can't stay long," she murmured, as Mira led them to a back room partitioned by hanging tarps, a cot and table squeezed amid filing cabinets stuffed with faded maps. Ethan pulled the ledger from his vest, laying it open under the harsh glow of a hanging bulb. Pages rustled like dry leaves, entries glaring in black ink. Payoffs to Sheriff Klein, a name that burned. Klein had been a green lieutenant in their unit, honor-bound once, now rotten to the core. Mira scanned the documents, her lips pressing into a thin line. "This is dynamite. Dates match complaints I've heard. Vets disappearing, families hounded. I'll digitize it, send encrypted to a contact in the capital. But Klein's got roadblocks up. You'll need to lay low till it breaks." As she worked, snapping photos with a clunky camera, the group settled into uneasy quiet. Rook and Silas stood guard at the bays, their silhouettes framed against the light, while Jax tinkered with a bike chain, his usual quips silenced by the weight. Timmy perched on the cot, tracing the iron promise on Lena's wrist with a fingertip, his voice small but curious. "Did Dad make this with you? Before I was born?" Lena's eyes met Ethan's across the room, a flicker of the old warmth breaking through. "Yeah, kid. In a place full of shadows, it was our light. Promised we'd always find each other." Ethan knelt beside them, the concrete cool under his knees, his hand covering Timmy's. The boy's touch grounded him, a reminder that this fight wasn't for abstract justice, but for the fragile circle they'd reformed. "I broke that promise once," he admitted, voice rough, the words scraping out like gravel. "War took pieces of me, left me running instead of standing, but seeing that mark on you, it pulled me back. We're family now, chosen, bound tighter than blood." Timmy's face lit with a grin, pure and unscarred, but Lena's expression clouded, her fingers lingering on a fresh cut on her palm from the mill's struggle. "It's not just us, Ethan. Klein, he was there that night in the foxholes, when we hid the unit's cash from the brass. Syndicate got to him after, twisted it into their game. If he finds us here..." The thought hung unfinished as sirens swelled outside, closer now. Tires crunching on the approach road. Rook burst through the tarp, his frame tense. Two cruisers, unmarked backup. They're circling, Klein's lead car. We move or we fight. Adrenaline surged anew, the air electric. Mira snatched the camera's chip, tucking it into a hidden compartment. "Go out the back alley, leads to the arroyo. I'll hold him here. Play dumb." Ethan scooped Timmy up. The boy light as a promise kept, while Lena grabbed a pack. The Vipers mobilized in a blur, engines primed, doors eased open to the rear shadows where dawn's light barely reached. They slipped out into the narrow alley, the walls closing in with the stink of overflowing dumpsters and sun-baked earth. The arroyo waited beyond, a dry gash in the land twisting toward open desert. But as they mounted up, a shout echoed from the garage. Mira's voice, sharp and defiant, buying seconds. Headlights pierced the alley's mouth. Klein's cruiser blocking escape. The sheriff himself stepping out, broad and paunchy now, his badge glinting like false gold. Flanking him were two deputies, hands on holsters, faces hard, with the syndicate's leash. "Harlan," Klein called, voice oily with feigned authority, eyes narrowing on Timmy. "Heard you been stirring dust. Hand over the kid and whatever you took from my friend's warehouse. Make it easy. No need for old unit drama." Ethan's blood boiled, the ledger's weight a fire in his chest. Klein's betrayal stared back, a foxhole brother turned predator, the corruption laid bare in the light. Rook revved his engine. A warning growl, while Silas and Jax formed a wall of chrome. Lena clutched Timmy tighter, whispering, "Hold on," as Ethan faced the line. "It's over, Klein. We have the proof, your payoffs, the whole rotten web. Syndicate's done pulling your strings." The sheriff's laugh was hollow, echoing off the bricks, but his eyes darted, uncertainty cracking the facade. A deputy shifted, hand twitching, the air taut as a drawn bow. Tension coiled, seconds stretching like taffy. Ethan signaled the crew, slow advance, no first blood, and the Harleys inched forward, a united front against the blockade. Klein raised a hand, but before words could fly, Mira's garage erupted in a controlled crash. Tools scattering, a diversion that drew the deputy's eyes. The Vipers surged, engines roaring to life, weaving past the cruiser in a tight maneuver that forced Klein back. Bullets? None fired, just the threat, the standoff breaking into pursuit as tires screeched behind. They hit the arroyo, bikes bouncing over ruts, dust plumes rising like veils. The road forked ahead, north to safety or deeper into the Badlands, where truths could hide and strike. Ethan's mind raced. Expose Klein. Shatter the syndicate, but at what cost to the boy? Timmy's arms locked around him, a small voice cutting the wind. "We fight them, right? For the promise?" Ethan glanced back at Lena's determined face, the crew's bikes a thunderous shield. Dawn fully broke, illuminating the path, but shadows of doubt lingered. Betrayals unearthed, loyalties tested to the breaking point. The ride pressed on, toward a reckoning that would forge or fracture their iron bond forever. The arroyo's jagged walls rose like ancient guardians on either side, channeling the Iron Viper's convoy into a narrow vein of dust and determination as the morning sun climbed higher, baking the earth into a shimmering haze. Ethan's Harley bucked over the uneven terrain, tires gripping loose shale, while the ledger thumped against his ribs like a caged bird desperate for flight. Timmy's small frame pressed forward against Lena's back, his breaths quick but steady, while her hands anchored to Ethan's sides, a lifeline woven from years of fractured trust. Behind them, the pursuit howled, Klein's cruiser and its deputies bouncing in ragged chase, sirens slicing the air like accusations, their lights flashing erratic warnings against the canyon's red rock. Rook and the others fanned out, engines growling in protective formation, buying space with calculated drifts that forced the lawman to slow or risk the drop-offs. Ethan's mind sharpened amid the chaos, the wind tearing at his beard and carrying the acrid bite of overheating brakes from the trailing vehicles. This wasn't blind flight, it was a gauntlet, leading Klein deeper into Viper territory, where the Badlands' secrets could turn the tide. The sheriff's betrayal burned fresh, the man who'd shared foxhole watches, sworn the same oaths, now leashed by syndicate gold. "Hold tight," Ethan shouted over his shoulder, voice lost in the roar, but felt in the way Lena's grip tightened. Timmy nodded against her, his whisper barely audible. "They're not going to catch us. The promise is stronger." The words fueled Ethan. a spark igniting the cold resolve that had kept him riding solo for so long. No more ghosts. This was redemption's edge, where honor carved paths through corruption. The arroyo widened abruptly into a basin ringed by boulders, a natural amphitheater the Vipers knew from old runs, perfect for a stand. Ethan signaled with a raised fist, and the convoy braked in a synchronized skid, bikes forming a crescent barrier that hemmed in the cruisers as they barreled into the trap. Dust clouds billowed like smoke signals, engines idling to a menacing purr, while Klein's lead car fishtailed to a halt. Deputies piling out with weapons drawn but hesitant, the sun glinting off badges tarnished by greed. Rook dismounted first, his bulk a wall of leather and loyalty, hands open but eyes like steel traps. "End of the line, Klein," he rumbled, the echo bouncing off the rocks. "We know what you've become. The ledger's out. Your payoffs, the hits on vets like us. Syndicate's puppet show is closing." Klein stepped forward, paunch straining his uniform, sweat beading on his brow despite the chill in the shade. His deputies flanked him, but their stances wavered, glances darting to the encircling bikes, Silas with a shotgun slung casual across his lap, Jax revving idly to underscore the threat. The sheriff's face twisted, a mask of bluster cracking under the weight of exposure. "You think a bunch of ink and rumors scares me? Harlan, you were always the fool chasing shadows from the war. Hand over the kid and the book, or we add resisting to the list." But his voice faltered, eyes flicking to Timmy, who peeked from behind Lena's shoulder on the bike, small and defiant. Ethan swung off his Harley, positioning himself between the boy and the line. The ledger pulled free and held aloft like a banner. "It's not rumors," Ethan said, tone even as desert stone, flipping pages to reveal the damning script. Entries in Klein's own scrawled hand, dates aligning with vanished brothers, bribes funneled through shell accounts. "You sold us out after the foxholes. Twisted our promise into your chain, but blood for blood, forever bound. That's not just ink, it's us." He tossed the ledger toward the sheriff's feet, the pages splaying open in the dirt, a testament unburyable. One deputy, a young kid with fresh eyes, bent to glance, his face paling as recognition hit. "Sheriff, this is you, with the snake crew," Klein snarled, lunging for the book. But Rook's boot pinned it down, the big man's shadow swallowing the moment. Tension coiled like a spring, the basin holding its breath amid the scent of hot metal and sage. No shots rang out. This was justice's quiet thunder, the kind that broke without blood. Klein's deputies lowered their guns, one muttering into his radio before stepping back, the fracture spreading. "Calling it in," Nard the young one said, voice cracking. "Feds need to see this." Klein's empire crumbled in real time, his bluster deflating to a wheeze, hands trembling as the weight of betrayal settled. "You don't understand. They had me cornered, the debts from the unit." But Ethan cut him off with a shake of his head, pity mingling with the fire in his eyes. "We all had debts. You chose the wrong side. Ride away, Klein, before the real law catches up." The sheriff backed toward his cruiser, deputies following in stunned silence, engines firing up with a sputter that mocked their retreat. Dust trailed them as they vanished up the arroyo, the sirens fading to echoes. The basin fell quiet, save for the Viper's relieved exhales and the distant cry of a hawk wheeling overhead. Mira's voice crackled over the radio. "Ledger's sent. Feds are moving. Syndicate's web is unraveling from the capital down. You're clear." Ethan turned to his crew, nods passing like handshakes in the light, bonds reforged stronger than before. Rook clapped his shoulder, a grin splitting his scarred face. "Ghost no more. You're home." Lena dismounted, pulling Timmy into her arms, the boy laughing for the first time, a sound like sunlight breaking clouds. She met Ethan's gaze, tears tracing clean paths through the dust on her cheeks. "You kept it. The promise." He pulled them close, the three of them a circle unbroken, the tattoo on his arm brushing theirs in silent vow. The war's shadows had lifted, not erased, but shared now among the chosen family, the vipers scattering to their lives, but ready to ride when called, justice's echo rippling outward. As the sun crested fully, bathing the basin in warmth, Ethan fired up the Harley one last time, Timmy between them, Lena's hand in his. The road ahead stretched clean, a legacy of honor carved from scars, where promises endured not as chains, but wings. The convoy rolled out, engines harmonizing with the wind, carrying them toward horizons unbound, redemption's dawn, eternal. If this tale of unbreakable bonds touched your soul, hit that subscribe button and join the ride for more stories of honor on the open road. Thank you for riding with us.